So in the US, the Justice Department, the DOJ, final rule implementing President Biden's Executive Order 14117 came into effect. This rule that was issued on December 27th of last year has significant implications for US persons involved in the transaction of sensitive personal data with certain foreign entities. And we'll get a little bit more into what that means. It's crucial to understand the implementation timeline here. So the rule took effect on April 8th, which was 90 days after its publication. But importantly, the reporting requirements, specifically for restricted transactions, will be phased in and take effect later, after October 8th of this year. So 270 days post-publication. And this idea is this phased approach gives organizations time to prepare. So at the heart of this rule is the definition of sensitive personal data. The regulation targets transactions involving 6 specific categories of the data exceeding bulk transfer thresholds. So we'll get a little bit into what that is. The idea is if this type of data is exploited by a country of concern, which includes China, and that also, encompasses Hong Kong and Macau, Cuba, Iran, North Korea, Russia, and Venezuela, or a covered person. So that's an example of like an entity or an employee that's located in one of those countries, or potentially whose activities are controlled by one of those countries. So they don't necessarily have to be located in the country of concern, but may have some relationship outside that. And the idea is that, if the data could be exploited in such a way that could harm US national security. So that is the main reason why these protections are being put in place. The categories that are covered, as you see listed on this slide here, around covered personal identifiers. So like names are linked to a device, ID, your social security numbers, other government IDs. And threshold here is, over 100,000 US persons whose data is transferred over a 12-month period. So the thresholds apply across a 12-month period. So precise geolocation data, like your GPS coordinates, the threshold there is 1,000, over 1,000 US devices. Those would be subject to this rule. Biometric identifiers like facial images, voice prints, retina scans, again, over 1,000 US persons. Human genomic data like DNA, genetic test results. This is bulk threshold is 100 US persons. So transfers, at that threshold, the rules apply here. Personal health data, like your vital signs, test results, diagnosis, thresholds over 10,000 US persons, and then personal financial data being the last category, such as credit card details, bank account information for over 10,000 persons as well. It's important to note that certain data is excluded, like public or non-public data unrelated to individuals, like trade secrets, proprietary information, and then also personal communications that don't transfer information of any value. So it doesn't include, like, some of the sensitive categories that we just talked about. The rules place prohibitions and restrictions on US persons engaging in certain covered data transactions with countries of concern or covered persons. And those key prohibited transactions include data brokerage, the sale or licensing of access to sensitive data where the recipient didn't directly collect it. And then access to bulk human genomic data or biospecimens that which genomic data could be derived from. So those are prohibited. Restricted transactions and transfers, they're permitted only if they meet the security requirements set by CISA. And restricted transactions include vendor employment and non-passive investment agreements. And then the CISA requirements focus on areas like cybersecurity policies, access controls, data security measures like encryption, and adopting privacy enhancing techniques. U.S. persons that are involved in the transaction must also ensure that the foreign entities that are receiving the information don't resell the data to countries of concern. So you really need to kind of understand that downstream data flow and who your partners are working with. And the rule also prohibits, directing prohibited transactions and evasive practices. The rule also does include exemptions. It wouldn't be a rule if you didn't have some exemptions, such as personal communications, official U.S. government activities, certain financial services transactions, corporate group transactions for routine business. Transactions are required by law, and then there's other specific exemptions for telecommunications and drug device authorizations involving de-identified data. Now, while the rule doesn't impose universal compliance obligations, companies that are involved in restricted transactions must implement comprehensive compliance programs. This includes risk-based procedures for data flow verification, identifying sensitive data types, confirming transaction parties, who is receiving the data and what protections they have in place, tracking the in-use vendor identification, also having written security policies, annual audits, and a 10-year record keeping are also required. So okay, the key tip here is know your data flows, understand the requirements for each of these jurisdictions, because this new rule on sensitive personal data does have significant implications. So again, understanding the definitions, the prohibitions, restrictions, exemptions are key.